Hello, all you freedom-loving people. The Clintons agreed to testify in person to Congress regarding the Jeffrey Epstein case. Joe Biden's ex-husband was arrested for the murder of his wife, and a biolab in Las Vegas was found loaded with potential pathogens. Okay, let's get into it. Amid the partial shutdown of the U.S. federal government, the House Democrats continued to be divided over whether to support the Senate-approved funding bill. Last week, the Senate passed a funding bill that covered most federal departments for the full year, but it only extended Homeland Security funding for 2 weeks since lawmakers continued to debate immigration enforcement. ICE funding has since become a key point of tension among Democrats. Yesterday, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries stated that the Democratic caucus had expressed differing views on the bill during a closed-door meeting. While Democrats broadly support the bipartisan consensus that was reached in the Senate regarding funding for other departments, they feel excluded from the process concerning the DHS, and they have yet to see the immigration enforcement reforms that they deem indispensable. Jeffries stated unequivocally that any annual funding proposal would face resistance unless the DHS and ICE underwent fundamental change. Republicans, meanwhile, indicated that they would get the bill across the finish line mostly on their own. They don't need bipartisan support. Then the House easily advanced the funding package in a party line vote late last night, and they prepared it for a floor vote today. Then today, the House passed the funding package in a 217 to 214 vote, and they sent it to President Trump's desk for signing to end the partial government shutdown.
I'm thrilled to sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and fund the vast majority of operations through the rest of the fiscal year. The bill officially ends all taxpayer subsidies for radical far-left woke programming on NPR and PBS, just a waste of money. It slashes nearly $10 billion in wasteful foreign aid spending, giving money to countries that don't need it. They have plenty of money. And we ended that. That was so important, $10 billion. Think of it. It continues the closure of USAID and creates a brand new America First Opportunity Fund for responsibly providing foreign assistance to nations where it actually serves American interests. So we have nations that do help us and it serves our interests, so we have something to help them out with. This bill also cuts funding to abusive and weaponized IRS programs. I was a victim of that too. You probably read that. Did you read that recently, right?
Sure.
I was, I guess, the ultimate victim. That were used to harass American taxpayers. It builds on the Republican rescissions package passed last summer, which saved Americans billions and billions of dollars. It fully funds our military, includes a well-deserved pay raise for all American service members, and makes historic investments in the American shipbuilding industry, which is great. It continues to fund deportation flights that are removing dangerous illegal aliens from our country. It continues historically successful efforts to reduce crime.
21 Republicans voted against the Senate-passed package, while 21 Democrats voted for it. The legislation will now fully fund 5 sectors of the federal government through the end of the fiscal year, and it will extend funding for DHS only until February 13th. Even though the legislation moved forward, it faced strong opposition from Democrats. Some Republicans also pushed back, saying that it did not include the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act requires voter ID in federal elections. But today, Speaker Johnson announced that the next task is passing the SAVE Act with both voter ID and citizenship requirements.
SAVE Act attached to it.
Well, look, we are going to be fighting for the SAVE Act, and I'll tell you why this is so important. We've passed it twice in the House, and we will pass it again. The SAVE Act just simply says you have to have verification of citizenship to register to vote. That's about a 90-10 issue on many of the polls in this country, and we're going to enhance it by what the president calls the Save America Act. And so it would be proof of citizenship to register to vote and voter ID, which is also about an 80 or 90% issue on the polling nationwide, depending on who you talk to. These are very important things to ensure that our elections are free and fair and safe. And that's a critical component of maintaining a constitutional republic. So this is a big priority for not just House Republicans, but for the American people. And we will continue to attach this to legislation and send it over. And it will be part of the discussion over the next couple of weeks, and we'll see how that shakes out. But I suspect that some of the changes, the procedural modifications with ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement, will be codified. I mean, they've said that they're willing to do some of this, and so we'll see how it comes out.
Yesterday, during an interview with Dan Bongino, President Trump said that Republicans should take over the voting process in certain areas and nationalize voting.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it. The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
And today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt explained what President Trump meant when he said Republicans ought to nationalize voting.
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election. And that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
And Leavitt also explained which 15 states President Trump was referring to.
Again, what I was just telling you is that with the passage of the SAVE Act, voter ID will be implemented across all 50 states. The president was referring to specific states in which we have seen a high degree of fraud. If you look at states like California, or if you look at New York City, for example, non-citizens are allowed to vote in elections in places like California and New York City. That just creates a system, an electoral system, that is absolutely ripe with fraud. And you cannot deny the fact that, unfortunately, there are millions of people who have questions about that, as does the president. He wants to make it right, and the SAVE Act is a solution to doing it.
Today, officials announced that the ex-husband of former First Lady Jill Biden was arrested for allegedly murdering his wife in their Delaware home in December. Back on December 28th, police responded to a domestic dispute call and found Linda unresponsive on the floor. Attempts to revive her failed, and she was pronounced dead at the scene, but her cause of death has not been released. William Stevenson was taken into custody yesterday after officials spent weeks investigating the death of his wife, Linda. The Newcastle County Police Department presented evidence to a grand jury, which returned an indictment charging Stevenson with first-degree murder. Stevenson was arrested at his home without incident, and he was later arraigned. He remains in custody after failing to post $500,000 in bail. Jill Biden divorced Stevenson in 1975 after a 5-year marriage. Under Delaware law, a first-degree murder conviction carries a sentence of life in prison. Yesterday, Las Vegas police said that they were testing more than 1,000 samples that were found inside a home that was believed to be a possible biological lab. Investigators searched the property on Saturday, and they confirmed that it is a lab that is linked to a similar biolab in California. They had raided that lab 2 years ago, which was operated by Chinese nationals. During a press conference yesterday, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Sheriff Kevin McMahill said that the potential biological and hazardous materials were mainly found inside a locked garage at the property. Special hazardous materials teams used drones and a robot dog to test the air inside the home before entering. Once inside the garage, investigators found refrigerators, a freezer, and several unknown containers. Investigators carefully collected more than 1,000 samples from the makeshift lab, and they sent them to FBI labs for testing. They feared that the samples could contain HIV, malaria, and other potentially dangerous pathogens, similar to what was found at the previous illegal biolab in California. FBI Las Vegas chief Chris Delzato said that investigators understand the public wants answers, but he emphasized that testing the evidence will take time and it must be done carefully to ensure accuracy. And McMahill said that investigators learned last week that the home in Las Vegas is owned by a Chinese national who is already in federal custody over the illegal biolab case in California. The Chinese national also owned a nearby house that was searched, but officials said that no suspected biological materials were found there. During the operation on Saturday, police detained Ori Solomon, who has been charged with felony disposal of hazardous waste in an unauthorized manner. Solomon is believed to have managed both properties in Las Vegas. 3 renters were also safely removed from the home during the raid on Saturday, but they are not involved in the investigation at this time. McMahill said that the home had been fully cleared and tested and that there is no threat to the public. The home is owned by David Destiny Discovery LLC, which was registered in Nevada under the name David He. Authorities said that name matches a pseudonym used by Jaya Bei Ju, who was arrested in October of 2023 in connection with the illegal biolab in California. Ju is a Chinese citizen who previously lived in California. In 2023, Ju was charged with illegally manufacturing and distributing medical devices and for making false statements to the FDA. According to court records, Ju and others allegedly made, imported, and sold hundreds of thousands of COVID-19, HIV, pregnancy, and other medical test kits in the U.S. and China. The companies involved were all based in California. According to officials, Ju previously held a senior role at a state-controlled company in China. That company was characterized as a military-civil fusion. A report by the House Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party found that the California biolab contained thousands of samples of potential pathogens, including HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, and COVID-19. In the California biolab, investigators also found a freezer labeled Ebola. Ebola is a disease that is known for having a very high fatality rate between 25 to 90%. Also, the California biolab received more than $1.3 million in unexplained wire transfers from banks in California, with the total amount likely being higher. President Trump stated yesterday that he had spoken with Indian Prime Minister Modi. The United States and India have reached a trade agreement whereby both nations will mutually reduce tariffs. President Trump said, "We spoke about many things, including trade and ending the war with Russia and Ukraine." He agreed to stop buying Russian oil and to buy much more from the United States and potentially Venezuela. Venezuelan oil shares the same characteristics as Russian oil. It is heavy and high in sulfur content, making it highly suitable for producing derivatives such as fuel oil and diesel. According to data from global trade data provider Kepler, India continued to import approximately 1.5 million barrels of Russian oil daily, even months after President Trump imposed punitive tariffs on Indian goods last year. Russian oil accounted for over 1/3 of India's total imports. Ceasing oil purchases from Russia represents a significant decision for Modi. President Trump praised Modi as a strong and respected leader of India and one of his greatest friends. He said, out of friendship and respect for Prime Minister Modi and as per his request, effective immediately, we agreed to a trade deal between the United States and India, whereby the United States will charge a reduced reciprocal tariff, lowering it from 25% to 18%. They will likewise move forward to reduce their tariffs and non-tariff barriers against the United States to zero. The Indian Prime Minister also pledged that in addition to purchasing over $500 billion worth of American energy, technology, agricultural products, coal, and numerous other goods, India would elevate its Buy American commitment to a higher level. President Trump stated, "Our amazing relationship with India will be even stronger going forward. Prime Minister Modi and I are two people that get things done, something that can't be said for most." Modi confirmed the reduction in U.S. tariffs in a post on X yesterday. He wrote, "Delighted that made in India products will now have a reduced tariff of 18%. Big thanks to President Trump on behalf of the 1.4 billion people of India for this wonderful announcement. When two large economies and the world's largest democracies work together, it benefits our people and unlocks immense opportunities for mutually beneficial cooperation. President Trump's leadership is vital for global peace, stability, and prosperity. India fully supports his efforts for peace. I look forward to working closely with him to take our partnership to unprecedented heights." Last week, India closed a major free trade agreement with the European Union, which European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen touted as the mother of all deals. This agreement is expected to open up India's historically highly protected vast market to the 27 member states of the European Union, with a particular focus on manufacturing and services. The deal will substantially reduce import tariffs on key European products such as automobiles and wine, in exchange for facilitating Indian exports of textiles, gemstones, and pharmaceuticals to Europe. The agreement will see India gradually reduce its automobile tariffs from the current 110% to 10% over 5 years, ultimately permitting up to 250,000 European vehicles annually to enter the Indian market. Additionally, the agreement will reduce India's tariffs on EU wines from 150% to 75% and eventually lowering them to 20%. And tariffs on olive oil will decrease from 45% to 0 over 5 years. And tariffs on machinery, chemicals, and pharmaceuticals will be reduced to 0 also. Some analysts predicted that the progress between Europe and India would light a fire under New Delhi and Washington in their pursuit of a bilateral deal, in which it did. To avoid being found in contempt of Congress, the Clintons agreed to travel to Washington, D.C. for in-person questioning as part of the congressional investigation into the Jeffrey Epstein case. Yesterday, we mentioned that House Oversight Chair James Comer once again rejected the Clintons' request for alternative testimony. He called it unreasonable, and he accused them of seeking special treatment. But then the Clintons agreed to testify in person at the last minute. But it remains unclear whether Comer will accept this last-minute offer and call off the full vote to charge the couple with contempt of Congress. Comer said in a statement last night that he still had questions on the last-minute offer. He said, "The Clintons' counsel has said they agreed to terms, but those terms lack clarity yet again, and they have provided no dates for their depositions. The only reason they have said they agree to terms is because the House has moved forward with contempt. I will clarify the terms they are agreeing to and then discuss next steps with my committee members."
I think everyone knows the Clintons have agreed to the terms. They issued a statement last night and they said they agreed to terms, and the story came out. I asked reporters, I said, then what's the date? And they said, well, we don't know yet. Well, that's a very important term, is the date. So I'm very pleased today that the terms were the rules of a standard deposition. So they're not going to be treated any differently than anyone else. And the dates will be in February, in the next few weeks. So the contempt motion is still on the table. The contempt of Congress is for failing to show up. This will be their third date that we've given the Clintons. And 3 strikes and you're out. The votes are there for contempt. I think there are Democrats that will vote to hold him in contempt if the Clintons miss this next date.
Representative Robert Garcia, the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee, said that he didn't see a scenario where the panel's chairman didn't accept the offer. Garcia said, "We've said from day one that we wanted Bill Clinton to testify in front of the Oversight Committee. We've been repeating that, and we've been working obviously with their teams, and so I'm glad they're going to testify." The Clintons' lawyers had sent this proposal via email during the committee hearing, at the very moment when Comer was testifying in the contempt of court proceedings. Then House Rules Committee Chairwoman Victoria Fox announced that the panel would hold off on announcing contempt resolutions. The latest Epstein files have implicated a number of prominent figures. Epstein's emails reveal that the former Duke of York, Prince Andrew, had extensive dealings with senior Chinese Communist Party officials. One email in November of 2015 to billionaire investor and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman revealed that Prince Andrew maintained close ties with Xi Jinping. Epstein wrote, "Prince Andrew is off to China. He spent a great deal of time with Xi." Prince Andrew held formal meetings with Xi Jinping at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, China's principal government building, on two occasions in April of 2016 and May of 2018. Chinese state media published photos of the pair exchanging handshakes. Official Chinese Communist Party media reports state that Prince Andrew sends a personal letter to Xi Jinping each year to mark his birthday. Documents released last year revealed that his former senior aide, Dominic Hampshire, claimed that Prince Andrew and Chairman Xi had always maintained channels of communication. Prince Andrew had previously attracted security service attention due to his repeated contact with Yang Tengbo, a suspected Chinese spy. Yang Tengbo established a consultancy firm in the United Kingdom named Hampton International Group. Prince Andrew held at least 3 meetings with Yang Tengbo, inviting him to Buckingham Palace, St. James Palace, and to Windsor Castle in 2020. In 2023, then Home Secretary Suella Braverman barred Yang Tengbo from entering the United Kingdom. Her Majesty's Secret Service alleged that Yang Tengbo was a member of the Chinese Communist Party and worked for the United Front Department, which is responsible for intelligence gathering. Kevin Warsh said that he wants to remove central bank fast food from the Federal Reserve menu. Now, market watchers are preparing for a possible overhaul at the 113-year-old institution. So how will Warsh plan to craft monetary policy? We are certainly no prophets. However, we can glean some insight into his plans from his past statements. Based on Warsh's past policy record and the minutes of meetings during his tenure at the Federal Reserve, his monetary policy philosophy is clearly discernible. He has repeatedly opposed large-scale asset purchase plans, and he warned that buying government bonds and mortgage-backed securities known as quantitative easing would sow the seeds of inflationary risks. Even during the financial crisis in 2008, he voiced concerns about excessive monetary easing in internal discussions. The quantitative easing measures that were instituted by then-Chair Ben Bernanke in 2008 was one of the contributing factors behind Warsh's resignation from the Board of Governors in 2011. He believes that quantitative easing tends to benefit the wealthy disproportionately, and it worsens income inequality by inflating asset prices, boosting valuation of stocks, bonds, and housing. He maintains that the central bank's core responsibility lies in safeguarding the value of money rather than intervening in asset prices. Consequently, markets interpret Warsh's nomination as signaling a structural shift in the Fed's policy logic. And he made no secret of his criticism of the current monetary policy. In April of 2025 International Monetary Fund speech, Warsh said, "It's necessary to set aside some of the fast food that is part of the current practice of monetary policy. Central bank credibility is the coin that purchases American economic strength. In Washington, a central banker can ill afford to be anything other than a straight shooter." The market anticipates that Warsh may implement a deceptive combination which may include interest rate cuts coupled with balance sheet reduction. The Fed in 1961 rebalanced its portfolio by purchasing long-term Treasury securities and selling short-term ones in order to lower long-run interest rates without boosting the balance sheet. This was later repeated in 2011 and 2012. This kind of operation is known as Operation Twist, but Warsh is unlikely to adopt this approach. As a result, an institution helmed by Warsh will likely lead to a more conservative use of the balance sheet. Charlie Ripley, the senior investment strategist for Alliance Investment Management, said, "There is a sense that a Warsh Fed technically leans more hawkish, with an unwillingness to utilize the balance sheet to cap long-term rates. As a hawkish figure, Warsh is more concerned with rebuilding the credibility of the U.S. dollar and ensuring the soundness of the balance sheet. Consequently, he is likely to adopt an aggressive balance sheet reduction strategy by selling treasuries and MBS on the balance sheet in order to recover base money from the financial system." So why do people still believe Warsh will cut interest rates? In November of 2025, Warsh published an article in the Wall Street Journal. In the article, he introduced a new theory. His theory is that AI can drive a supply-side productivity revolution, changing our understanding of inflation. He believes that the U.S. is on the verge of a productivity explosion led by AI. Increased productivity boosts the supply of goods and services, which promotes economic growth while lowering prices. Therefore, it brings deflation pressure. So the Fed should not worry about inflation. And this is evidently another reason why President Trump selected him as the next chair of the Federal Reserve. Whether AI can achieve the results that Warsh anticipates in the real world remains unknown, but Warsh clearly does not base monetary policy solely on core personal consumption expenditure data, and he has criticized the Federal Reserve for not truly understanding inflation and the Fed's role. Warsh said in October of 2024, "They don't seem to have a serious theory on inflation that is theoretical and empirical. It is not obvious that they acknowledge what the role is in prices." He told CNBC, "I think in a world this dangerous, an economic policy where fiscal policy is irresponsible, the central bank needs to be very clear about its reaction function, be clear about its goals. That's what put us in the mess we have." The result of this combined operation is that the book cost of funds will decrease, but liquidity in the market will tighten. In other words, the value of the U.S. dollar will appreciate. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. Please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family because everybody deserves to know the truth.